Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to take the first call for the Greens on the Local Government Act 2002 Amendment Bill number 3, the second reading of this bill. And Mr Speaker, I have to say I'm a bit perturbed by the fact that the Local Government and Environment Select Committee is currently hearing submissions in the South Island, and so it's left to people like myself to pick up the slack, if you like. And my colleague Eugenie Sage will probably comment on this in the second call that we have. Mr Speaker, New Zealanders expect councils to provide good quality infrastructure, good water supply, drainage, sewerage, roading and community facilities. And development contributions provide capital to fund investment in infrastructure to help meet the needs of a growing population. Development contributions ensure that new ratepayers pay their share of the costs of putting in new infrastructure to service them, rather than the existing ratepayers pay for it. Auckland Council is expecting substantial population growth and is planning major investments in infrastructure to support this. The Council anticipates that over the next 10 years, the city will grow by approximately 270,000 new residents, which is about 58% of New Zealand's population growth. Auckland Council plans to collect about $2.1 billion in development contributions over the next 10 years if the status quo remains. And the Council plans to spend $480 million of those contributions on community facilities such as libraries, swimming pools, sports facilities and other public amenities to help provide the quality of life and amenities that people expect in our largest city, which we want to be the world's most livable city. This bill has a major impact on the Council's ability to do this because of its very narrow definition of community infrastructure and its prohibition on development contributions being used to fund libraries and swimming pools in particular. Many submitters, Mr Speaker, opposed this new amended definition and asked for the current provisions to remain. And Auckland Council said that without development contribution funding for these community facilities, they would not be built, or rates would have to rise by 8.5%. Auckland Council's development contributions policy has been standardised across the region, and it was a major piece of work after the forced amalgamation. It was developed after extensive consultation with developers and the community, and it was even praised by some submitters on this bill. Yet with the changes to development contributions, this bill creates considerable uncertainty about whether Auckland and other councils will be able to fund community facilities without increasing rates, or whether they'll be able to provide adequate community infrastructure in growth areas. The introduction of an objection process is also likely to cost councils and reduce development contribution revenue still further. Auckland Council, and I'm referring specifically to their submission, I know, but it was a very important one because they've been the test case. Auckland Council said the objection process was likely to cost about $1 million in additional staff and legal costs and other expert resources, and a potential loss of development contribution revenue of $3 to $4 million in revenue each year, and that means $40 million over 10 years. And who benefits from this? Mostly it's subdividers and property developers. The other problem that this bill will compound is how to fund the replacement of ageing community facilities. Local government provides or supports the overwhelming majority of recreation and sports opportunities available to communities. And the New Zealand Recreation Association, in their submission, estimated that local government owns $7 billion worth of recreation and sports assets and invests $800 million a year in operational costs for these facilities. The association noted that a significant number of recreation and aquatic facilities are coming to the end of their useful life. and Sport New Zealand, they said that about 40% of our indoor courts are over 40 years old, and 35% of Auckland swimming pools are over 45 years old as well. Many swimming pools are ageing. In Auckland, we now need another 10 to 12 swimming pools over the next 20 years. In my own community of Waiheke, we've been relying on a 30-year-old primary school pool as our only public facility, and our local board has been advancing this quite well, I have to say. But will we be able to access council funds to build one, or any other community be able to access funds for this? That's another matter. This bill will make them unaffordable. It will deprive communities of basic recreational amenities. Mr. Speaker, there was a very strong submission during the select committee process from Public Libraries New Zealand, who opposed changing the definition of community infrastructure, and I quote from their submission, it said, "Large new developments significantly increase demand for local libraries and other community services. Young families, migrants, young people and older New Zealanders, the very people to be found in many new developments, rely on public libraries to connect them with their communities, the wider world, and the many services that they rely on from central and local government." End of quote. It's not fair to local residents to face increased rates or user charges for library services to access information which should be free. But that's what this bill risks. And think about what libraries are now. They're community hubs. They're modern, comfortable areas where the public can read and learn, where kids and adults can access the internet, and where activities happen that consolidate our communities and bring us together. This month is New Zealand Music Month, by the way, and at my local library there are performances every weekend from local musicians. We're showcasing the Waiheke Choir, Canto Asola, this Saturday as well. So we risk depriving, my daughter's in that choir, by the way, we risk depriving new communities and new developments that are being pushed through by this government with the Housing Accord. We risk depriving them of the tools to build community health and well-being and cohesiveness. And if we don't do that, what we have are ghettos. Mr. Speaker, we oppose this bill because we still remain concerned about the push for amalgamation of competent councils and rolling out the local board model for other regions, not just Auckland. And you have to question, we have to question, why we need to continue to force amalgamations. Is it to remove pesky democratic processes and reduce the effectiveness of regional councils to monitor and protect our air, water, land from degradation? After all, that's why the elected Canterbury councillors were sacked by this government 4 years ago. As a super city survivor myself and a former Waiheke local board member, I speak from experience about the erosion of local democracy as a result of forced amalgamation of local and regional councils. Before amalgamation in Auckland, we had a regional council that acted as a safeguard for us. Where I live, we had several cases where the City Council several times issued resource consents to the most out-of-scale and environmentally degrading developments, and we were saved by the Regional Council taking action. And that includes an 80,000 cubic metre clean fill that the council put through a consent for, saying it was just earthworks. Regional councils are our checks and balances. More than 3 years into amalgamation, we see that development continues and our regional council, our check and balance, has been lost. And guess what? With that amalgamation, there came no cost savings whatsoever. And what happened was that we were forced to undergo a system of taxation with no representation when we had 7 council-controlled organisations foisted upon us. We don't think this is a democratic process. that should be rolled out anywhere else in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Mr. Speaker. We will be opposing this bill.
Honourable Phil Heatley.
I rise to support the Local Government Act